Okay, so welcome back, and now we are about to create our first database. Okay, so we will be using Microsoft Access as I told you previously. So let's go into start. Okay, you can come into start and you can type access. Okay, so this is the spelling of access. Let's open it up. So as you open it up, it'll ask you, okay, what type of a file do you want? Okay, so for now we are going to be dealing with a blank database. So let's click blank database over here. As soon as you click that, the first question it asks you is, what is the name of your database? Okay, so the name of our database is going to be called taxi hailing database. Okay, let's just give it a name like this, taxi hailing database, where we are basically going to be creating a database for a taxi company where customers can book a taxi. Okay, something very simple like this. uh, so this is the name of my database, taxi hailing database. If you are watching the video, what you can do is, while you're watching this video, you can either pause and do what I'm doing on the screen, or you can watch the entire video and then practice thereafter. What I would recommend is you pause the video, practice the little bit that I just did. For example, I opened access, I clicked on blank database, I gave it a name. Okay, I would recommend doing little bit by little. Okay, now what you need to understand over here is this is the name of our database, and over here it's telling you where the database is going to be saved. So over here it's telling you it's going to be saved in local disk C, users, Ahmed, inside documents it's going to be saved. So if you do want to change the location of it, and I do want to change the location of my database, I want it to be saved somewhere else. So I would click on this folder over here. I will click on this folder over here, and I would go, for example, to the desktop, and I would come to learning database, and I would save it inside this particular folder. Okay, so over here I would go ahead and click on OK, saying the database can be saved inside this folder. Let's click on OK. So once you have defined where your database should be saved, thereafter you can go ahead and click on create. So now your database has been created. Okay, now for my database, for this particular database, for this taxi hailing database, we will be having three tables. Okay, the three tables are, table number 1 will be the table about drivers, the drivers details. Table number 2 will have the customer details, and table number 3 will have the booking details. Okay, so when a customer makes a booking with a driver, automatically a record will be made in the booking table. So this is why we will be having something called a booking table. Okay, so let's get our first table created. The first table we are going to create is a table called driver, or drivers, sorry, drivers. Okay, so you can see already a table has been created for you, and right now what you can see on your screen, okay, what you can see right now, you can see these columns and you can see these rows. Just remember that right now we are in a view that's called data sheet view. Okay, right now we are in a view. When you can see these columns and these rows, this particular view is referred to as data sheet view. Okay, let me show you. If you come to your home tab and if you click on view, can you see right now we are in data sheet view? And what I want you to remember is, in data sheet view is where you enter your records. Okay, so when you want to enter details about your drivers, now this particular table is going to be about drivers. I still haven't told my database that yet, but I'm telling it to you. Okay, this particular table, I'm going to use it to enter details about the drivers working for this particular taxi hailing company. Okay, so when you want to enter records, when you want to enter rows, you want to enter the first driver's details and the second driver's details and the third driver's details and so on, you will enter it in data sheet view. When you want to create fields, okay, now say for example when we talk about a driver table, we will have certain fields. So for example, we will have driver name, driver date of birth, driver gender, driver contact number, driver's address. Those are fields, right? So the fields will be created or will be done in what we call the design view. Okay, so the fields are entered in design view while the records are entered in data sheet view. Okay, so I hope it makes sense so far. Okay, shall I just quickly go through what I just said? The records, okay, the details of your driver. As I told you, this particular table we'll be using it for drivers, so details of the drivers will be entered in what we call data sheet view. The structure of this table, what are the columns that we need, or rather what are the fields that we need, that will be entered in design view. Okay, so let's go into design view and let's enter the fields where we will tell we need a driver name field, we need a driver date of birth field, we need a driver gender field. Okay, so let's go into design view. Now as soon as you click on design view, the database asks you, okay, what is the name of this table? First save your table, give it a meaningful name. So we will very simply say it's going to be called drivers. Okay, this is the name of our table, it's going to be called drivers. Now as soon as you click on OK, this is what you see. Okay, what are the fields that you want for this driver table? Okay, and once again I'm reminding you, we are now in design view, because design view is where you enter the fields, data sheet view is where you enter the records. Okay, so the first field that we will have is something called driver. I'll just refer to driver as DRI, driver ID. Okay, so driver ID is basically a number, a unique number for each driver. So each driver will have a unique number assigned to them. Okay, each driver will have a unique number assigned to them. Okay, okay, so after driver ID, now driver ID, what type of data is driver ID going to be? So as you remember, we in the previous video we spoke about the various data types. Okay, however we did not talk about this auto number, right? So auto number is basically where your database will automatically assign the number. You do not need to type a number, your database on its own will assign a number for the data. So if you want, you can keep it at auto number, or else you can put your own number. So you can either go with short text, you can go with number. Okay, it's entirely up to you. What I will do is I will go with short text. Okay, because I want every driver to have a number, like I want every driver to have an ID like this: D001, D002, D003. So I'm going to keep it as short text. Okay, now the next thing after driver ID, the next field that we have is driver name. Okay, the next field we have is driver name. What is the name of the driver? So driver's name is also going to be short text, no probs. After driver name, we are going to have driver date of birth. Okay, driver DOB. Now this would have definitely come to your mind. Yes, driver date of birth cannot be short text because date of birth is a date. Okay, so let's click over here and say we want it to be a date or time. Okay, perfect. Then after driver date of birth, let's put another one, which is driver contact. Okay, so this is basically the driver's contact number. Over here I'm going to keep it as short text. I'm going to keep it as short text. There's a good reason why I'm keeping it as short text and not as number. The reason is the driver's contact number is going to begin with 0. Now if the data type is set to number, and if the number begins with 0, automatically my database omits the 0, because it considers it as a unnecessary character, because 07 and 7 are the same thing. Okay, so when you put 07, your database is going to automatically remove the 0 because it's unnecessary. 07 and 7 are the same thing, so it will automatically exclude the 0. Okay, I do not want that happening. When I put 0, I want 0 to remain. So which is why I'm not going to keep the data type as number, because when I keep the data type as number, the 0 at the beginning will automatically be excluded, will automatically be omitted. Okay, so I'm not going to keep the data type as number, I'm going to keep the data type as short text. Okay, another reason is certain telephone numbers begin with +94 or +96 or +91. I'm sure you would have seen certain telephone numbers, they have the plus symbol in front of them. Okay, so if the data type is set as number, you cannot put the plus symbol in front. Database would not accept it, because when the data type is number, special characters will not be accepted, only numbers will be accepted. So setting the data type for driver contact number to number is going to cause issues, so better I keep it at short text, where I can put a telephone number beginning with 0, and I can also put special characters in the telephone number such as the plus symbol. Okay, so I do hope it's making sense, I do hope it's going well. Okay, let's continue. After driver contact, I'm also going to have the driver's address. Okay, where does the driver live, where does he reside? And then we're also going to have one more thing, which is called driver vehicle type. Okay, what type of a vehicle does this driver have? Okay, okay, so these are my fields. Okay, these are my fields. Okay, now let's go back into datasheet view and see how it looks. Okay, let's go back into datasheet view. Let's click on view, datasheet view. So they're asking, do you want to save your table? Yes, of course I want to save it. As you can see the fields are visible: driver ID, driver name, driver date of birth, driver contact, driver address, driver vehicle type. If you want, you can make this slightly bigger. Okay, and it's ready for you to enter your first record. Okay, so my first table is now ready for records to be entered, for drivers details to be entered. Okay, my first table is ready for it. Okay, now before we do move forward, there is something else I want to teach you, something some more details about a table. Okay, so let's go back into design view. Now if you do look very carefully at driver ID, you would notice there is a kind of a key symbol over here. This key symbol is what we call primary key. Okay, this key symbol is what you call primary key. Okay, and in every table, one field should be made the primary key field. Okay, normally what Microsoft Access does is Microsoft Access normally automatically makes the first field the primary key field. However, if you want to change it, you're free to change it. Say for example, if you want to make driver address the primary key field, you can simply right click and say make this the primary key field. Okay, but I want to keep it at driver ID, so I'm going to keep it over here. Now the question is, what is this primary key? Now in a table, in every database table, there has to be one field that has unique data in it. Okay, there has to be one field that has unique data in it. It should not have data that is repeating. Okay, I'll repeat myself again in case you're confused. Every database table should have one field, should have at least one field that has unique data in it. Now if you were to look at the driver table, you would notice that the driver ID will only have unique data in it. Two drivers will never have the same driver ID. That's impossible. If that happens, there is a problem in your table. Okay, think about yourself, think about your school. In your school, is it possible for two students to have the same student ID? If that happens, something has gone wrong somewhere, because two students can never have the same student ID. Think about your country. So for example, if you're in Sri Lanka, every citizen of Sri Lanka, I mean, once you after 17 years, they give you something known as a national identity card, and every national identity card has a number. We call it the NIC number. Two people in the country will never have the same NIC number. Everybody has a unique NIC number. Okay, so just like this, in this table, every driver is going to have a unique driver ID. Now the field that has unique data in it will always be made the primary key field. Okay, so when I tell you assign the primary key for this table, you will immediately look, okay, from these fields, which field has unique data in it? That field is going to be my primary key field. Okay, is it clear? So in this case, when you look at this table, driver ID is the field that has unique data, because if you look at driver name, it is very much possible to have multiple drivers with the same first name and last. It's possible at least two people will be there with the same first name and last name. It's possible. There is a chance of that happening. Date of birth, definitely. Contact number, possible. Okay, the same driver may join the company and then leave the company and then again join the company, so he may use the same contact number, so contact number may repeat. It's possible. Driver address, possible. You can have two drivers living at the same address and registering with the same company. Driver vehicle type, of course. Okay, you can have multiple drivers having the same vehicle type. So you can see over here, driver ID is the only field that has unique data in it. So driver ID is the field that would be the primary key field. Okay, so over here, as you can see, we have this key symbol over here. Okay, now the next thing that I want to talk to you about is where for every field you can put certain rules for it. for every field you can put certain rules, and these rules are what we call validation rules. Okay, so for every field, for the driver ID, for the driver name, for the driver date of birth, you can put certain rules. Okay, I'll tell you in more detail what are the rules, but these rules are what we call validation rules. So in these validation rules, say for example, when it comes to driver ID, you want to have a rule where you will only accept 4 characters. Maximum 4 characters can only be entered, because every driver ID is going to go like this: D001, D002, D003. So you can see it's only 4 characters. So you want to put a rule for the driver ID field saying accept only 4 characters. If somebody types 5 characters, do not accept the data, say something is wrong with it. Okay, so when you click on driver ID, at the bottom you can see the field properties for driver ID, and you can see here the field size is 255, meaning it will accept up to 255 characters. So you can change this to 4. You can say accept only 4 characters. Okay, let me tell you another. Now this is what we call length. This is what we call length check. Okay, this is a type of a validation check which is called length check. You're checking the length. Okay, there is another type of validation check that we have which is called presence check. So in presence check, you will not allow the user to keep that particular field blank. So say for example, when it comes to driver, say for example driver address, for example when it comes to driver address, you do not want the driver to keep this field blank. You want every driver to enter their address. You do not want them to keep it blank. So then you can use something called a validation check. So how do you do it? You can come down to the properties, and can you see we have something called a required? Can you see right now I have highlighted it? So right now for required, it is no, which means it's not compulsory for the user to fill this particular field. It's not compulsory. When the value no is there, it means it's not compulsory. If the user wants, he can fill it. If the user wants, he can keep it blank. But say for example you want to put a rule, you want to put a validation check where the user cannot keep it blank. He has to fill a value there. So then instead of no, you can change this to yes, which means required. It's compulsory. The user must put a value over there. He cannot keep it blank. Okay, superb. Then we have something called type check. Okay, we have something called type check. So for type check, for example, we can refer to date of birth. So when we have a type check is basically you accept only a certain type of data. Now say for example when it comes to date of birth, you have defined that it should only be a date or time. If somebody types a long number, don't accept it. If somebody types some letters, don't accept it. They should only be allowed to type a date or time. You get it? That's what we call a type check. You're checking the type of data being entered. Okay, this is what we call a type check. Okay, then another type of check we have is something called a range check. Okay, so I can't think of an excellent example, but I'll just give you an example over here. So range check is when you're accepting values within a certain range only. So say for example drivers, for example you're only accepting drivers who are born before for example 1st January 1st January 2000, for example. Okay, I'm just giving a random example. You are only accepting date of births, or you are rather only accepting drivers who are born before 1st January 2000. So then you can use something called a range check. So you can see at the bottom we have something called validation rule. Okay, so in your validation rule you can say for example before, okay, you want values that are the other way, you want values that are before 1/1/2000. So basically you're telling your computer, you are given a rule to your computer saying for driver date of birth only accept values before 1/1/2000. Okay, the very next thing is validation text. So in validation text you can display an error message. Say for example if somebody types a date of birth of 1st January 2002 for example, now that date of birth we should not accept. So if you want, in validation text you can type a message that will be displayed when somebody enters a value that is not inside this range. So say for example you can say say for example somebody enters a date of birth of 2002, you can say only drivers born on or before, or let's say born before 1st Jan 2000 are allowed to register. Okay, say for example you can display this error message. Okay, so if somebody puts a date of birth in 2002, you can immediately display this error message will automatically be displayed on the screen. Okay, so this is the fourth type of validation check, okay, which is what we call a range check. Okay, let's go through the types of validation checks again. So for example, we have something called a presence check. A presence check is where you can use it to ensure the users do not keep that particular field blank. They have to fill a value. So we did that for driver address. So for driver address we said required yes, which means the user cannot keep it blank. He has to put a value for it. Then we have something called a type check. So we did that for date of birth, where we said accept only date or time type of data. Do not accept text, or do not accept numbers, or do not accept currency. Accept only date or type of data. Okay, then third type of validation check we have is a length check. So we did that for driver ID, where we said accept only 4 characters, nothing more than that. And then we finally had one thing called, we had the final one, which was range check, where we only accept values within a certain range. So we put that for date of birth, where we said accept only date of births before 1st January 2000. Okay, so now when you go back into datasheet view, okay, when you save your data, and when you fill this, now for example let's put a value that is after, let's put 111/2002, you will immediately get a error message like we said. Can you see? Only drivers born before 1st Jan 2000 are allowed to register. My spelling of register is wrong. Okay, so you can see it's working. Okay, if you want to come out of this record right now, can you see this record is in edit mode? Can you see the pencil mark is there, which means it's in edit mode. And if you want to come out of it, press the escape key, so it will come out. I'm about to press the escape key. Okay, what happened? Let's click again, escape. Okay, now can you see it has come out of it? Okay, so I can go back into design view again even. Okay, okay, so with that we have now learned how to create a table in database, and we have also learned how to put validation checks for our fields. Okay, now moving in the next video, we will create 2 more tables, the customer table and the booking table as well. Okay, see you in the next video.